Hi, it's Brittany Lowe, the founder and CEO of Bea, and I'm so excited to be interviewing my friend Alex Bushman, who's the founder and CEO of the Bushman Group, which is a community and impact agency. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the makeup. I feel beautiful.
I mean, you look gorgeous, and I have to tell you, I remember meeting you briefly. So we met when we were both attending a event at Shopify. We briefly spoke, and then you invited me to speak on a panel for one of your companies, Good Old Girls Club, which we'll get into. I speak on a lot of panels and events, but I walked away from your event specifically being like, wow, Alex knows everyone in New York City. You're so well connected. And it was a type of event where, yes, we were talking about my entrepreneurial journey alongside amazing founders, but I walked away learning so much from the women there. And I think there's one thing of putting together an event that's sexy and cool, but you create events that are community first, that just happen to have such an authentic feel. And then getting to know you even more, I can see why your events are so successful, because you live and breathe your agency, in every event or anything that you touch is so you. And I really admire that. And I just wanted to tell you that because you are so impressive, and I'm so honored to have you and just hear more about your story.
Thank you so much. It's funny because that event specifically was only like our third or fourth event, and it was pouring rain outside, and we got we were like, oh my gosh, like, is anyone gonna come? Like, you're so worried. And then it ended up being one of like the most meaningful and like impactful events that we've done. And I think it was largely because of the women, the panel and the women that showed up that day, like despite the fact that it was so rainy, and that was a really beautiful event.
It was so great. I remember, I think sometimes when it rains, don't you feel like everyone's like down to party, down to network harder, and you walk away, you're like, wait, this was a great rain day. Yeah,
and the people that really want to come end up coming, and I think it's just really special.
So let's go back to the beginning to shed some light on where you are today. So during COVID, you were working at a catering company that was a refugee immigrant-led catering company called Eat Off Beat. And then COVID-19 happened. And then somehow, like a few months later, you're now partnering with Danielle Bernstein, who is a mega influencer that I follow dearly. And you co-founded a business with her called We Gave What. So how did that happen?
So basically, before the pandemic, I was working in the like nonprofit social impact space. So I never thought that this influencer space was going to be like my world at all. I think I told you this. I had a really big crush on Ben Higgins. I hope he's not watching this. But he had spoken on a panel, and I had seen Danielle speak on the same panel. It was about influencers using their platforms for good. And this was like before the pandemic. And so when the pandemic hit, everyone stopped ordering catering. So Eat Off Beat, we lost 100% of our orders within like hours. And we were like, how are we going to keep this refugee and immigrant-led catering company open? The chefs were amazing. Danielle at that time had like posted something saying that she like wanted to be using her platform to support small businesses. And so I sent her a cold DM, which we were just talking about earlier. And I was like, can I bring you food from this amazing catering company? The chefs are wonderful. Will you like post about us and share our story? And so I did. I drove out to the Hamptons with my sister, and we dropped off the food, and she posted about us. And immediately within like minutes of her posting, we started getting hundreds of people reaching out.
Hundreds?
Literally, I remember sitting there in the car with my sister. She drove because I can't drive. And she literally was like I was like looking at the Instagram and just like flooding in. I'm sure you've experienced this maybe with influencers who have like a really strong platform. Like the impact is almost immediate. And so I got home and I went to hop in the shower to like wash off like all the COVID. And I was like, wait, I think that there's something more here. Like, I think that influencers could be using their platforms to build communities and impact outside of like their own personal brand or whatever it is that they're normally posting about it. And so pitched her We Gave What, and here we are 4 years later.
Wow. And so then you pitched her via DM?
I sent her a DM. I still remember like grabbing I remember when she saw the DM, I said, Danielle, like, I love the way you're using your platform right now. I have an idea. Like, can I launch the philanthropic arm of your brand? And at that time, the idea was going to be called We Did What, but We Did What was taken. So now it's We Gave What, which I actually love. And so she asked to do like a pitch deck and to like talk about it. I'd never done a pitch deck before. I had no idea what a pitch deck was. I like texted my friend who was a graphic designer, and I was like, do you know what a pitch deck is? Like, can you help me make one? And then presented it to Danielle and she loved the idea and we got started like 3 weeks later. Had no idea what I was doing.
Let's talk about even that initial meeting. She asked for a pitch deck.
Yeah.
You've never made one before. You don't even know what it is.
No.
She has millions of followers. She's like super impressed. It's probably a little intimidating. How did you like find the confidence to one, like DM her, but also like how did you show up to that meeting and not like, I feel like when I'm nervous, I can hardly form a sentence, let alone present a pitch deck. So like, how did you get into the right headspace to be able to have that confidence to have a really great meeting?
I think two things. I think one thing is that like I have always been terrified of public speaking. Like I remember in college, like having a course where I literally emailed in sick to the professor because I was supposed to public speak that day. I grew up really shy, like very reserved, like, and so if I'm speaking about something that I don't know about or I'm not confident about, like that's really intimidating for me. But someone said this to me the other night at our girl dinner. They're like, you're really like, you seem really comfortable up there. And I'm like, I think it makes such a difference when you're speaking about something that you like really believe in and are passionate about. I think that comes across. And even like, if that's coming across and then like maybe you're stumbling over your words or like a little bit nervous, like that's fine because it's like people really understand that like you believe in this and like then the energy is almost kind of like contagious. So that, and then also, like I said, like I feel like one thing that's a skill is being able to reach out to other people when there's something that maybe you don't know how to do. So had I built that pitch deck by myself, I would not have felt confident. But my friend was a really talented graphic designer. And so I felt really good going in there with this like deck that she had built that was like really beautiful. And then
so you asked for help.
Asking for help, I think is super important. And then the third thing was just like taking advantage of the resources that you have. And so I had gotten my master's in social impact strategy at Penn at University of Pennsylvania. Okay. And at the time when I did that, I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to, like what I wanted to do with that master's degree, but I knew that I wanted to go into the social impact space. And so I just like within the weekend, like retook the entire course, applied all of the materials and resources that I had like for that program to We Gave What, and like built out this whole business model. And so I listened to this like affirmation, confidence thing. Like I still listen to this day, like every time I have like a big meeting or anything like that. And it's like one of the pieces of the affirmation is like, I did 3 things to feel really prepared for whatever I'm about to do. And so like, if you can think of 3 things in your head that you did to make you feel prepared, I feel like that helps you feel a lot more confident going into something like that.
I love that. I always say that preparation plus opportunity is what leads to luck. And I think that when you feel really confident, it's not just that you like woke up out of bed and went to her apartment to go pitch her. It was you spent a lot of time. You were educated and you took that time to study up beforehand. You asked for help from your very talented network to like help you create the best pieces of material that you could present. And it seems like you worked really hard and you were very passionate about it too, which I think I agree with you. There was another person that we interviewed, Allie, who you actually know, and she said the same thing. It's like when you're nervous, the best thing to do is not make it about you, but remember your mission and your why, because that's so much bigger than you. And that's where like confidence, you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the people that you can help. And that's where I think you shine the most. And I see you in rooms when you're talking so passionately, it seems like it comes naturally, even if you might be nervous inside.
Thank you. That's really sweet. And I feel like sometimes we think we sound a lot more nervous than we actually do. Like I remember Allie, when she launched What Do I Do Brides, she was saying how nervous she felt like leading up to it. And then when she spoke, I was like, you seemed like so confident. Or even Dr. Bridget, when she sat on the panel, she was like, this is my first panel. I was like, I would have had no idea. So I think it's also just like putting yourself out of your comfort zone and doing things more. And like the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it.
I agree with that. And so, okay, so you started We Gave What with Danielle. And so then how did that you start the Bushman Group?
When I was doing We Gave What, there were, like I said, I'd never been in the influencer space before. It was a very new world to me. Wow. And so I started like through that, like meeting lots of other influencers and realizing like, wow, like influencers are just humans, which sounds crazy, but like they have things that they care about too, that they're passionate about beyond maybe what they're just posting like on social media. And I think something that's been really cool about the evolution of the influencer space over the past like 4 years has been that influencers now are really passionate about building out community and also about using their platforms for impact. And so that was kind of the idea for the Bushman Group, that I wanted to work with influencers and brands to help them tap into whatever like community meant to them or whatever social impact meant to them and like really bring that to life.
And so in the consumer product goods world, which I'm in with Bea, the CPG world, everyone wants a community. Like my community helped us sell out in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But community is kind of a fluffy word. So like, how do you define like community?
Well, that's a good question.
Shared vision? I don't know. Like that.
Yeah, maybe like a shared, like it has to be something shared because it's about building something that's like bigger than yourself. So I think it's like a shared vision or shared mission and like kind of like shared way that maybe you like see the world. I don't know, maybe that's fluffy too, but like
no, that makes sense. I think community is more of like, are they customers or are they a community, right? Like that's two different, I think having loyalty to a brand that you're like, I want to help with the R&D and the research and development to create your next product versus saying, oh, I have X amount of customers. That's my community. I think is very different.
Totally. I also, this might be a tangent, but I like to think of community kind of like in the largest sense of the word. And so like, for example, for Good Old Girls Club, obviously our community is the women that attend our events, but it's also our brand partners. It's also the women who are sitting on our panels. Like it's also the venues that we do our events at, like their teams. Like I think if you can think of it kind of like as big as possible, maybe that can, I don't know, like I feel like then everyone can kind of like see themselves in it a little bit more.
Community is people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And so in terms of the Bushman Group, because you are someone who's truly a serial entrepreneur, every time I look at social media, I'm like, oh, she started another business. She's helping this other client of hers. I don't know how you do it all in a day. Under the Bushman Group, you have Good Old Girls Club, you have Girls Dinner. Like, how did you start with one idea and branch it into these subsections that truly are their own entities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of will, like, just speaking of like how to do it all and like what community means, like I feel like what I'm trying to foster with the Bushman Group is like an ecosystem of brands and people and influencers and nonprofits and that all kind of care about community impact, because that makes it a lot easier for me as it's not like, oh, I'm just working with Bea over here and Brittany doesn't like touch anything else. It's like Brittany and like was part of the Good Old Girls Club event, but I also know you're a founder and I also know that you want to connect with other founders. And so that like you came to Girl Dinner and like, I know that you care about, you know, beauty and makeup. So maybe I would pull you into like a Makeup by Kellyanne thing. Everything is kind of like this like Bushman Group ecosystem for me. And it feels like such a deep extension of like who I am and what I care about that it doesn't really feel like segmented in a way. Like it all feels kind of like really cohesive to me, but does that make sense?
Yes, and it does make, I think you have like the same lens as you've built out these different verticals, but it does make sense. Like after I sat on the panel for Good Old Girls Club, the speakers, we were like, let's get drinks. We want to like connect. Like, how are you growing your business? How can I help you here? And so that's almost the spin-off of Girls Dinner. Right. But it all shares the same lens, the same mission, but you're keeping it within this one community that you've grown further and further with different touch points, I would say.
Totally.
And like, do you feel like you've been passionate? So you're truly, I think, when I see community and impact, sometimes I see from a business perspective, like, all right, is this brand just saying that they're giving X away because it sounds good for marketing, or is this truly part of their mission? And then this is something that's like in your bones, in your DNA. Yeah. So where did this come from?
So I think, which like, I know we've talked a little bit about before, but like for context, when I was growing up, I was 8 years old when 9/11 happened. I lived across the street from the Twin Towers. And I was in, I guess it was 8, so maybe 4th grade at the time, I think.
I think it was 4th.
And it was really wild because like, I don't know if you spent much time in Bowery Park City, like downtown Manhattan, but it really feels like a community. It feels like its own part of the city almost, which I loved and thought was like very special. And so in the like immediate months after 9/11, that it was really scary and hard to like experience that as an 8-year-old, because it just like changes the way that you see the world. And so we couldn't go back to our home for a few months. Like we couldn't go back to our school for like, I think it was a year. My parents were like, my mom was relocated from her office. She worked at the World Financial Center, which is across the street from the Twin Towers. And so I think that it, one, gave me like a deep sense of like when humanity can be really bad, but also like when humanity can be really good. Like I saw the way that people came together in the time, like right after 9/11. Like I remember all these people from like all around the world, like reaching out to us, to like the Battery Park City community, to like, you know, support us with like resources or just like whatever it was. Like I remember like getting like teddy bears from like students in Europe, and like letters and paper cranes from students in Japan, which is like a symbol of like good fortune. And so I think that just like really like instilled in me from this very young age that like community, whether it's like your immediate community, like the Battery Park City community, if my soccer teammates who like brought me like soccer clothes so that like because I couldn't go back to my home, like my soccer community, if it's like just like a really deep understanding of how like powerful community can be. And then also when it comes to impact, like there are all these really shitty things that happen in the world, but like when those happen, like I think sometimes if we're able to tap into like our capacity for hope or purpose, like that's a really beautiful thing. And so when the pandemic happened, and New York City felt like very like hopeless and really dark, that's kind of why I wanted to create We Gave, what was to like create some sort of sense of hope and community. I think they really go hand in hand, honestly. So yeah, that's around.
Wow. So it's truly deep rooted in your mission, in your life. And I do think like our life experiences shape who we are. I love that it has been a piece of you, and now you're paying it forward by creating these different companies and brands and ecosystem. And so as someone who maybe wants to start a community, or maybe like myself, like I have a brand, right? A business, and I think social impact is so important, but finding our own passion and like, what does that look like? If someone is starting a business or has a brand and they want to lean more into having more social impact or giving back, like what would be your like top piece of advice?
That's a good question. I think it's probably, I mean, if it's a small business, maybe like as the founder being like, okay, like what is it that I'm really passionate and really care about? Like what are my life experiences that have made me care about this thing or shaped me in this way? Because I feel like if you build impact in a way that's not like authentic to who you are, or like, then it's like one, not meaningful for you. Right. Like that's like, I think also when you're building from a place of like purpose that's like genuine, like then it's much easier for the people around you to get behind it. Like it's much easier for your team to get behind it. It's much easier for your community to get behind it, all of that stuff, as opposed to if it's like you're doing something that you don't actually genuinely care about, which is fine. Like not all of us can care about every single thing.
Right. I think what I struggled with was what I'm passionate about is here. And then you think about, I was talking to someone who is at a big corporation and they have a big initiative in terms of impact. They're like, oh, it has to align with your brand, your business and what it does. So like, how do you find that balance of like, okay, if we sell body care products, right? But I'm really, really passionate about, like making sure underserved communities have toys around the holidays, right? Like, how do you balance like what makes sense for people to understand it from a brand perspective, but also like what the founder's really passionate about too?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that was like an actual example, but like I feel like that is such an easy like alignment. Like then maybe it's about finding a nonprofit or a community that maybe is underserved that could use like beauty products or like around the holidays. Like for example, River Fund, which is one of the nonprofits that Danielle sits on the board of and is one of our OG We Give What partners. Like they work with underserved. They say they work on the lines of poverty and they meet you where you are. And so obviously like that starts in a lot of ways with food insecurity, but then there are a lot of other needs that their community that they address as a nonprofit as well. So they have like baby showers for mothers. They have like a hygiene, like feminine hygiene drives. So like, for example, like right? Like, and it's really beautiful because every week, like multiple times a week, everyone from their community comes out and goes in line and like gets all their groceries, but they also have other stuff. Like sometimes they have school supplies, sometimes they have toys, like sometimes they have like hygiene products, sometimes they have beauty products. And so I think it's just about like also maybe just like connecting with as many different like nonprofits as you can and seeing like what their needs are and how you can best support them.
Because we do a lot where we'll gift like and work with different organizations through different events. Yeah. But it's a little bit here, a little bit here. It's all different kinds of organizations and charities. So that's really helpful to think through. Like it doesn't have to. I remember Stephanie on my team and I remember from the beginning, we were like, okay, what's the one, like, what is this what is this charity that we go super deep with? Because as a small business, I feel like maybe going wide won't be as impactful, but I think it really provided me a lot of like, oh, well, is it this charity? Or I don't know if this charity would work with us. So it seems like if you want to be able to give back, it can be broad in a few different places, but also finding one, and maybe it's not a beauty forward charity, but maybe there's something within one that you're excited about that you could create an idea with.
Totally, and 100%. And that's why I also kind of think that like meeting with the nonprofits is super helpful, because maybe it's like you're saying, it's not a beauty forward one, but maybe they're like we really need help with like social media, or we really need help with like marketing. And then maybe it's like, oh, like, yeah, actually our team is really good at this. Like maybe we can help you. Maybe we just need like physical people, like volunteering, like things like that. I think like I recently connected Glam Squad to
recently the beauty service.
So I recently met with a nonprofit that is like advocating around gun violence or preventing gun violence. And they needed like beauty services because they're survivors of mass shootings were going to the White House. And so I don't think you would think to like typically like pair like a beauty services brand, like company with a gun violence prevention nonprofit, but that was their need.
Wow.
So I think that there are like, you know, like when we're fostering those conversations, like I think that there are ways to build those partnerships that might not immediately like come to mind.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Okay, this gives me a lot of homework to think about, because I love that idea. It's not so much about like putting charities or like this idea of impact in a box, but just like being open to ideas and opportunities as they cross. Because whenever someone reaches out for any kind of charity and they need any kind of gifting or need, whether it's hair and makeup for Beautini or gifting through Bea, we're always like, it's always immediate yes. I think there's a further opportunity to be like, okay, we're happy to still say yes for all these organizations, but what's one that we can really double down and be creative with? So I love that. And so let's shift gears into talking more about Good Old Girls Club, which is this community of women where it's more focused on a career and networking, and then also I love your organization, Noelle, which is Girls Dinner. We're fostering this really fun community and dinner parties with other founders and like badass women. And so how do you think through, so that's a community in its own right that can also be sexy and fun, and you put on the coolest events. So Alex just recently put on this girls' dinner, and I went to last month's, and it was amazing. Like all the details, like it was just so well thought out that you felt like a guest almost at like someone's wedding, but no one was getting married. And so you had these newspaper, all the girls attending, you had entertainment, you had it in a speakeasy. Like how do you like think through, like if someone wants to, you know, put together an event for some friends or maybe other founders, or just want to bring their community together for a fun dinner, like what were some things that when you're thinking about putting on an event, what are those things where it's the difference between hosting just a dinner that has good food to something that's really meaningful?
I feel like the biggest thing for me has been having really meaningful partners.
Okay.
So, and for Good Old Girls Club and Girl Dinner, because they're both like female, all about women and bringing women together, a lot of that is like having really cool, like, female founders who are involved. And so, for example, everything from like our photographer, who's like an amazing, like, photographer who's been with us since like March and is also now part of the Good Old Girls Club community, and now has been doing the girl dinners, and to like our tablescape partner, everything like tablescape partner, like the newspaper that we did, which I was telling you, Allie connected us to, called the Ceremony Club, and it's a sister-owned small business. And so I try to like build relationships with vendors that are like I genuinely want to support and think are really amazing, and I think that they are so great at their job, and being able to bring them into all of these different events, I feel like has been a really amazing way to elevate like just like an average like dinner party.
So are you thinking about these events like, oh, I need this custom newspaper, who can I go to? I think we need to have this special tablescape. Or are you looking at your network, or how does that even, because I would have never even thought to like reach out to the Ceremony Club for a newspaper piece of this dinner party.
Yeah, well, I have to give a lot of credit to Noelle, because she's an amazing like event planner.
So Noelle's her co-founder of Girls Dinner.
Noelle's the founder of Girl Dinner, and she brought me on as, she knows how much I love to build community for women, and so she brought me on as co-founder and chief community officer. And so she has like a really smart like events planning brain, just like everything is very thoughtful and curated. But going back to like the thought process behind it, like something that I have loved doing over the past 4 years, like since I've been in this space, and like a large reason why I created Good Old Girls Club was because of the networking. And I love networking without an agenda. Like I love just networking to like meet women and learn about what they do. And like, then I feel like everything all comes around like at like when it's supposed to. And so like, for example, like you just meet, like I recently met like this woman who's like it's a female founded like bartending service. And so I just met her, but like we haven't planned anything yet we met a while ago. I went to one of her dinners, and then now like I'm finally bringing her into like an event that I'm doing this December. And so I think that just like networking as much as you can,
but without always having an ask in mind.
Right. And not to say that you can't network strategically. Like I've also been in stages in my life where I've just gotten coffee with everyone like all the time. And then I've been so burnt out.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really important to network strategically, but not necessarily like always with an agenda. Like I think there's like a distinction there, if that makes sense.
I think there's also like a give and get situation where it's like, if you're only being like, what can they give me? Right. It's never going to be long lasting because no relationship can operate that way. It has to be like, oh, she's looking for a person that does X. I have a friend that does exactly that. How can I help them? And then whether it makes sense for like a near term or long term need, like I do feel like there's weird ways of how life works and opportunities arise, and they maybe can give back in certain areas down the road or for an upcoming event that you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like I go through periods of like really intense like networking where I like want to go to every event, like I want to like get coffee, like stack my day like coffee. And then I go through periods where I'm like, okay, like I'm hitting like a tinge of burnout, like I need to like spend this week like just focusing more on like computer work or like getting like my social battery like recharged, because I don't know about you, but I feel like I love networking, but also, and I love connecting, but sometimes I'm like,
it's exhausting.
Yes.
And I find that ebbs and flows. Like I have times where I'm like, I need to execute and build, like I have build mode where it's like, okay, I need to work on something that I can then share with others. So like I've been like the last month or two, like just been executing mode where it's, I've been learning to say no to a lot of events because I've been so burnt out, and I just can't, if I can't show up and be my best self, then I know I deserve it. I need to say no and respect those boundaries so I can be building. And then there's other moments where like, I have this update, I can't wait to share it. I want to meet other people in the city. I want to connect. And then you can be your 100% best self.
Right.
And so in the times where you do feel like your social battery is depleted, how do you charge up?
It's interesting because it's not necessarily like, I'm not someone whose social battery needs to charge up by like being home and like not speaking to anybody.
Are you an extrovert?
I think I'm an extroverted introvert, which I feel like a lot of people say, but I like do deeply feel that. But for example, like Zoe, who's my co-founder for Good Old Girls Club, like she really needs to go home and like charge, like not speak to anybody and like put her phone away. And for me, sometimes recharging my social battery looks like that. It's like being on my couch, like watching like Harry Potter, like 1 through 7. But then also sometimes it's like me just being around people who like don't require like a social battery.
Yeah, I think like, that's like where the relationship's already established.
Right, exactly. Where like I can just be like weird and like awkward around you because I'm so tired, but it's like fine.
Yeah, it's like not, you have to like tell them about your business updates. Right. It's just like, can we just get brunch and have a move?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that has been like, I think that's been like the biggest thing that I meet with a career coach who I love and like would recommend to anyone who like doing a career coach to anyone who like is kind of navigating or figuring out their career. I've loved it so much. But she like taught me a lot about the importance of like when you're in periods of intense growth or like learning or like just a lot of big things are happening. It's really important to like take time to like reset and like reflect, because otherwise all the stuff that you're learning is not going to like sink in.
Love that.
So I try to do that.
I used to have a career coach, and I keep on saying I'm going to find someone, and I do believe every founder needs either a career coach or a therapist.
I have both.
Okay, this is even better. And so in terms of like anyone who's maybe trying to like level up their career, whether it's within a corporation or start their own thing, like what have been like the biggest takeaway from working with a therapist or a career coach?
I think it's interesting because this is for like founder specific. I didn't realize like when I was starting out on this like founder journey, I don't know what I'm putting in quotes, founder journey, how integrated like my identity as a like person was tied to my identity as like a founder, and like meaning that all my weaknesses or like areas for growth as a person would translate to being a founder, and same thing with my strengths. And so I think like working with the two of them hand in hand has been like really important for me. Like my biggest, I think, weakness like has always been that like I have a really hard time with like communicating around anything that's like negative. Like I'm not really tapped into my emotions that are like, I'm not really tapped in like deeply to like my anger or like my sadness. Like I really try to sit in like a place of joy, which I think,
which is a good way to live.
Right. It's like, I think again, like with the 9/11 stuff, like COVID, like I didn't really like sit in those negative emotions. I was really, it's like, okay, how can I make something positive or like bring hope to the situation? And I think that is a strength, but I think sometimes like when building a business, you have to sit in like the negative. You have to sit in like, oh, this isn't working, or, oh, like this is something that like we could be doing better. And so that's something that honestly, like working with my co-founder Zoe and my therapist and my career coach has helped me with a lot.
I like that because I do feel like sometimes even the strengths in your personal life, or maybe the strengths as a founder or CEO is really great in business, but when you translate that at home, at least that's how I struggle with it, is some of my traits in business, when I try to apply those to my relationship, they do not translate the same way. And my fiance was like, had a few conversations with me. He's like, listen, this works really well when you're hustling in business, but with us, he's like, no. And so I think it's funny just to be aware of like being able to like tap into both sides of you, but like you said in the day, like this is who you are, and both pieces of you are what create you and your identity. And so tell me, you're the founder and owner of the Bushman Group. You run multiple businesses. You have so much going on. You also go to the coolest events ever. So how do you structure your day? Like give me like a breakdown of like when do you wake up? What do we do? What does your day look like?
I would say that I wake up probably between like around like 7:30. Honestly, like sometimes the anxiety wakes me up. Like
I love like these are like I love this question because sometimes like I have a friend who like is one of the most successful people I know, and she's like, I do not wake up before 10 a.m. And I'm like, I so admire that. And she'll like work, she likes to work by the TV at night. And I was like, I think that when we look on Instagram and everyone's like, I'm up by 5 a.m. and then I work out and then I do this, it feels unrelatable. Yeah. So I love this question.
I love this question too. And then, so I've been I was waking up with like a lot of anxiety, I think the past year. And so then I listened to this podcast, and I don't remember what it was called, but it was about how sometimes we get in our head a lot in the morning and like then don't because we like just like had all these like swirly like thoughts in our like anxious thoughts in our head, like we're not setting ourselves up good, like the best that we can for the rest of the day. So I've tried to start doing this thing when I wake up that's like, instead of making a to-do list, being like, what are the best things that can happen today? And so instead of saying like, have a call with this sponsor, it's like, secure this sponsor. Like, and so it's like, it just like kind of changes the way that I'm like thinking about it. And honestly, I've really noticed a difference in the past like couple of weeks that I feel like I'm almost like with my daily to-do list, my daily, like what's the best that could happen list, like manifesting these.
Yes, it's manifestation plus like creating a to-do list at once. I'm going to do that too, because I think to-do lists can stress me out, and that's more of like a negative connotation. But you're saying it in a way where it's, ooh, what am I going to achieve today? And it has a lot more of an uplifting feel.
And so that's honestly been, I also feel like it's like Rachel Liverman, who's the founder of like Glow Bar. Like she just posted recently, like just like believe in something so much that it just like goes into it, you speak it into existence. So I've kind of been trying to do that like with this little like reframing of my to-do list. So I've been doing that when I wake up. Then I always try to go for a walk. Like I'm a big, like I told you, I've fallen off the workout train, but we're trying to be like, gentle with ourselves.
Hey, I work out, but I cannot hit 10K steps. It's really like a big problem in my life. Yeah. So I respect that.
Well, maybe I can go to workout.
You make me walk and I'll make you go to KK Sweat.
But yes, then I try to go for a walk in the morning. And I have a smoothie place on my block that I always go to. It's just like a small, like.
Ooh, what's your order?
It's called the Daily Detox.
Ooh.
And it's like a green juice. It has like carrot juice, like spinach. Like I have like one of those little punch cards like sold at the place.
So it's a routine.
Yeah. And that's like kind of like my like, at one point I was like, should I be like ordering juices like or to save money? But I was like, no, like this is such like,
no,
it feels like such a good part of my like day. Even like the person who works there is like so nice, and like she like knows so it's just
really community.
It's like a nice routine. Yeah, it's like a nice way to start the day. And then honestly, I think, like I was saying, like I switch between weeks. I'm trying to get better about time blocking my days so that there are days that are really like coffee connecting heavy, and then other days that are really like computer work, like building, strategizing, like that kind of work heavy. But every day is kind of different because I manage Good Old Girls Club. Like I'm doing Good Old Girls Club, girl dinner. I'm launching my charitable arm in January, and then I manage the community for Makeup by Kellyanne.
Wow,
which is a really wonderful group of women. And so for that, like it's about, we run our community in Geneva, which I think I've like told you. And so it's like checking in with the girls in the morning, checking like that kind of stuff.
So in terms of that role specifically, because Geneva, when I think community, that's a platform where all the customers can be a part of this Geneva community. You can message, you can create friends. Like, what does that role look like?
So for Kelly, it's like planning one event a month, which I've realized, like, I really like events. I did text my friend Cameron, who Forbes Functions, she's an event planner the other day. Like,
we just did a wedding with her with my other company, Butini, this week.
Was it the one the other day?
Yeah.
I texted her. I was like, I don't know how you do this many events. And she was like, I mean, it's like second nature to her at this point, but I do feel like the more that I do events and like the more that I have relationships with vendors that I trust, and I have really amazing people across all of the things that I'm doing who like make it easier. And so, yeah, but it's a lot of events. And then, wait, I think I'm jumping questions, but to go back to like the daily routine, a lot of the time after work, I'm attending events. I'm in like a very like yes phase to events right now, because I feel like, one, I just was never in this space before. And so now to be like invited to all this stuff, I'm just kind of like soaking it up. Like it's really fun. Like I felt like we had so much fun at the Nylon party, like
so much fun.
And I also want to support my friends because my friends are supporting me. And so when they have events, like I want to support them as well. And
but when you are in your no phase, how do you say no?
I actually said no last night and I was really proud of myself. And I think it's about, I've had people text me that they couldn't come to events or couldn't do stuff. And I could kind of tell that like, I don't know, maybe it's an excuse, which I understand. But like, I also have gotten texts from people where they're just like, I'm so tired right now. I'm so burnt out. Like, I love you and I want to support you, and I want to see you, but like, I just need to like take time for myself like tonight. And so I've been trying to do that more. Like my friend texted me last night and was like, do you want to come to an infatuation event with me? And I was like, Alex, 10 years ago, like infatuation was like my dream company to work with. But then I was like, I know if I go, I'm going to be weird. Yeah. I'm going to like be like probably like quiet and like not know how to talk to people. So I just said to her, for my mental health, like I'm exhausted from this week. Like I just need like a night like to be on my couch and like watch Inside Out too. So
love that.
Inside Out too. Yeah,
no, that's great. To be like, because I always feel like if I can go and I can squeeze it in, I do say yes. And that's something I was like, I need to learn to say no, because my anxiety last month has been through the roof, and I was like, something has to change because I can't run two businesses and not work all night. Like there's no, I just can't do it anymore. And I think saying no and just being upfront with it, I think is really, and if people don't respect that, I think that also sheds a lot of light on that situation at the same time too.
100%. I think it's also about like there are some events that like, if I'm really tired, but I like got invited to, like, this is like an insane opportunity, like I'm gonna go. But like I think for stuff like New York is crazy. There's 10 events happening every day and you just can't. And so I don't know. I think finding that balance is really hard, but it's really important.
So when you go to events, are you home and going to bed at the same time every night, or it really depends on when the event starts? Like, are you rigid with your bedtime?
Not rigid with my bedtime, but something that I've started to do more is like finding, like Noelle and I, like when we go to events, we like to go there on the early side, and then we like to leave on the early side. So trying to get better about that, but then also like leaving room for like, like if you're having so much fun, like just like the Nylon event, like I wasn't planning to stay as late as me neither. Then Paris Hilton came on. I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna.
Paris Hilton was DJing, we were dancing, and I was like, oh, one more drink, let's keep staying. And that was not part of the plan, but I'm so glad. But then I think that sometimes when you pack so much in, you miss out on those moments that make it memorable.
Totally.
And by us staying longer, I was like, that was one of the coolest nights in the city ever.
Yeah, that was really, really fun.
Wow. Okay, so my last question for you is that you are someone who's really great at bringing people together, but you're also like at these really neat events, like you know everyone. And so if you were in, like, I'm dying to know, how do you befriend, like how do you make friends in the city? Like how are you reaching out to people to start relationships, whether it's for personal or professional?
I'm like really, my mom says it never hurts to ask. I feel like that's like the one thing that's like really like stuck with me, both like personally and professionally. Like with Danielle, when I first DM'd her, like it was like, it never hurts to ask. Like what's the worst that someone says? And so and again, like when I think I was saying this earlier, like I think when people can tell that you're like genuinely passionate about something, like they're super open to like receiving that. And so if I meet someone or I see someone online who's doing something that I think is cool, or if I like at an event, like I'm pretty like unabashed, is that the right word? Like I don't have a lot of like shame around like going up to them and be like, hi, that happened with us. You were wearing a really cool purple blazer set and I loved your blazer. I was like, I also love a colored blazer set. Like we should be friends. And then look at this now. Like
here we are, and now you're on my podcast.
And you've spoken on my panels. Like you've been to events that I've done. Like we are like, I think that, and I do think that women in New York City, like right now, are really down to like connect with other women, which I think is really cool. And so I think you just need to be brave enough to like send a DM.
See, that's funny because one of our former guests, Allie, was saying that she learned the DM approach from you. And I'm someone who I'll ask when I'm really passionate, but sometimes like my nerves get in my way and I feel bad. Or if I want my friend to, post about Bea, it feels like a burden. And so this DM approach, if I were to ask a guest to come on the podcast, like what would you suggest?
I would be like, hi X, like I'm Brittany. I'm the founder of Bea and Buccini. Like I am launching this podcast, bringing on like really amazing like female founders, like who like you inspire me, and like I love your content, and I know like my community would be inspired by you too. Like, would you like to be on my podcast?
And then keep it simple. And if you don't hear back,
there's so many people that I've DM'd and haven't heard back, and I'm like, one day,
you're right. I think timing also is everything.
Totally. I think that Kelly, this is something I learned from Kelly, that like divine timing. Like, sometimes you don't connect with someone because like you're maybe not like ready to connect with them. Like for her, like maybe like she wasn't like, now she's her career as a makeup artist has grown to like where she just did Alex Cooper's makeup. She did Alex Earl's makeup, but maybe when she reached out to them like years ago, she wouldn't have been ready for that. Or for me, like there's so many people that I'm now partnering with for Good Old Girls Club or Girl Dinner or ISR or whatever it is, that like maybe when I reached out to them originally, I wouldn't have had like anything to kind of like offer them or for them to be part of, but like just being patient, I think, and like not taking anything too personally. Like if someone doesn't respond to you, like they're probably just really busy.
That makes sense. Yeah. Like again, like I do think it's also like having the right narrative in your own head. Reach out. No, that's okay. I'll still live. And also if they don't respond, it doesn't mean that they don't like you or something's wrong with your business or they're not interested. They might be busy. They might have never seen it. And just trust the timing, and the people who are meant to be part of your opportunity will find themselves to you.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with like, obviously in a really respectful way, like don't like go out and like send someone like 30 DMs, but like if you like follow up with people, like, when new things happen or you might have a new opportunity or new reason to connect with them, I think that that's totally fine too. So it doesn't always happen with the first outreach.
So I'm taking notes. I can't wait to DM thoughtfully a few more people to be on our podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, and I've learned so much from the moment I've met you on how to grow our community in a really authentic, thoughtful way. And I'm so honored to be a part of your community and see you grow. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was so